interesting, and you'll register. Feel free to contact me if you have any problems with registration. This is our first conference that we are organizing, so many of the tasks are made the first time. So yeah, we can you can encounter some, let's say, some registration delays or problems. Okay, so it's 6. Thank you. I will switch back to my Zoom, and I would like to invite Markus to present. Also, first of all, Markus Flechtner, he is an Oracle ace and principal consultant to Trivadis in Germany. He can be found on Twitter with handle MarkusDBA. This evening, he will present a material on security, and he will share his experience and knowledge on least privilege principle with an analysis on the privileges in the database. Markus, I hope you hear us. I see you online, so I will make you host, and you can start to share your screen.
So thanks for the introduction. So I will share my screen now. So desktop number 1. So just a quick check. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
Okay, good. So as mentioned, this talk is on a security topic, on privilege analysis, how to achieve the least privilege principle in your database. Yeah. Some words about me. Okay, as mentioned in the introduction, I'm from Germany, and so thanks for the chance to give this presentation at your meeting today. I'm a principal consultant at RoOUG Germany. I'm working with Oracle for more than 30 years now, as a consultant, sometimes with Oracle support, as a DBA, and I joined Trivadis in the year 2008. My focus is high availability, upgrade, and migration. And I'm a teacher for some of our trainings. One of these trainings is our new features training, and basically this presentation is based on one of the chapters, because this privilege analysis feature is a new feature, or was new in Oracle Database 12c. Okay. As mentioned, I'm on Twitter, MarkusDBA, and I've got an English blog, markusdba.net, and you will find the slides on my blog short after this presentation. Some words about my employer, Trivadis. We have a subsidiary in Romania for I think 3 or 4 years now, but we are mainly Swiss-based. Trivadis was founded in Switzerland 27 years ago. Now we have 16 workspaces. Germany, Austria, Denmark, Switzerland, and as mentioned, Romania. 700 employees, 800 customers, about 2,000 projects. So we are, I think, one of the larger consulting companies in the at least German-speaking area, part of Europe. Okay, that's for the introduction. Now there's the technical part. This is tweet of the Swiss Oracle user community. Make sure to enforce the principle of least privilege in your database. That's really important, but it has not been important all the time. So very often developers or administrators or software companies made something wrong because was easier for them, and so we have to find out which privileges are really required by your application. And that's the topic of this presentation. Go. So a short introduction on the topic. Then I'll tell you something about the tools Oracle provides for this feature privilege analysis, and I'll give some information about the workflow and how to evaluate the results and adopt the privileges so that you come to this least privilege principle. Yeah. Okay, introduction. Yeah. Looking back, security was not that really important. I remember being a DBA, and our developers came to me every day. I need this privilege. I need that privilege. And after some days, we agreed, okay, you'll get the DBA privileges. And we'll talk later about the privileges you really need. And we all know later means never, huh? Because at the end, deadlines come close and there's no time for testing or such things like security. Another thing is software vendors who need access to the database have the installation script, create table space, create user, grant DBA to user, which is a nightmare in terms of security. And in my trainings, my DBA trainings, I always say grant DBA to public with admin option, as you can see on the slide. And I was surprised when preparing this presentation, I tried this statement and it really works in an Oracle 19c database. Huh? Make everyone DBA with full administrative privileges. Probably not the best way in terms of security. Okay, what's this least privilege principle? Huh? Every program and every privileged user of the system should operate using the least amount of privilege necessary to complete the job. This privilege has been established or was established in 1974, so it's almost 40 years old, and it's still valid. Only the privileges you really need for your job should be granted to you. But how can we find out which privileges are really needed? Think about some PL SQL code, perhaps wrapped code, doing some secret stuff, and you cannot find out which privileges are needed because you cannot see the code. And this is where privilege analysis kicks in. Privilege analysis was introduced with Oracle Database 12c, and the idea is to capture all the privileges which are used by an application. Then you can report the privileges which have been used during your tests, and on the other way, the privileges which have not been used during the test period. And later on, you can create your own grant statements, create your own roles to achieve this least privilege principle. Sounds good. Unfortunately, there was this price tag, and here's a screenshot from the licensing documentation. Privilege analysis requires the Oracle Database Vault option. And I did a lot of new features trainings, especially when 12c was out. And I had only one customer in my training who said, okay, we've got the database vault license. Tell me more about this feature. All the others said, okay, it's not interesting for us because we don't have this expensive database vault license. But this has changed. Okay, as a licensing option. This has changed with Oracle database, or in November 2018. Oracle lifted this license requirement for database vault, and now privilege analysis is available for all Enterprise Edition users. So, licensing change was backported to Oracle Database 12c Release 1, although I hope that no one is still on 12c Release 1. Nowadays, I see everyone upgrading to the long-term support release 19c. And of course, this is another release to check your privileges. You can even run it with the Express edition of the database. Think about standard edition 2 users. If you are able to compact your data to, let me say, 10 to 15 gigabyte, as you know, Express edition includes compression. Then you can run your tests on the Express edition and later on port or migrate the findings to your standard edition 2 database. So it's not really a restriction if you can reduce the data to this small amount of data for the Express edition. Then even SA2 users can use privilege analysis. So it's empty now, and it's available for almost everyone. And that was a reason for me to start a kind of promotion tour for this feature, because I think it's extremely important to keep your database secure and to grant only the privileges you really need for your application. Okay. In reality, it's a little bit more difficult because logging the database usage, user X did that is kind of auditing. I don't know about the situation in Romania, but in Germany, you've got strong workers' councils, and they don't like when you audit who did what when. Even though privilege analysis is not really exact auditing, because you do not log when a user did what, but you have only a range of time because you start your auditing, your analysis at one point and you end it at another point. But it's a good idea to talk to them about your plans of privilege analysis. Security is always a good argument, and you should be on the safe side then. I made the experience that software vendors and your own developers often don't like if you analyze their applications and find out which probably high privileges are granted but not needed. So expect resistance from them. But at least if you're the DBA and if you're responsible for an important production system, you're on the safe side. Even if the privileges are not changed, they are documented, and you can tell your manager, okay, I told you this is a kind of security leak if the user for the application has still this privilege. So it's helpful for you as a DBA. What does Oracle provide you to do such a privilege analysis? It's basically one package, device privilege capture, and some dictionary objects, basically views which contain the results after your analysis. Okay, and I'll go through the procedures and functions in this package. And this gives you a short overview of the workflow. How is the workflow for such analysis? First thing is to create a capture. It's kind of rule set which database activities are captured. We'll go into detail later. Enable capture means you start this capture and then you have to do your tests. Disable the opposite. You end the capture, and then you fill the data, fill your result views with a generate result procedure. Drop, capture, and delete run are for housekeeping after you have completed your works. And capture dependency prefs is about the special situation with definers write and workers write PL SQL programs. You have to enable this, run this procedure manually to capture all these privileges in a correct way. We have some dictionary views. DBA pref captures is information on the policies and the runs. So every data collection is called a run. There's a pref capture dollar table and a captured pref table, which is basically the internal information on privilege analysis, and capture run log dollar, the last one of these internal tables, which, and this may be important, contains information on the start and end time of your analysis. This is not included in the views, but it may be helpful. No? All the result data is in your sysaux table space. Oracle puts more and more data in the sysaux table space, so it keeps growing. And this can be an issue for you, but later on I'll show you a way how to reduce the footprint of privilege analysis in the sysaux table space. Okay. Then we've got a set of result views. Basically, there are two groups of result views: DBA used views, which gives you the privileges which have been used during the test period, and DBA unused views. These are the views which have been granted to the user but which have not been used during the test. And there are different categories: public privileges, system privileges, so create session, create table, etc. And we have object privileges and user privileges. There are always two views. One is, for example, DBA used object prefs, and the second is DBA used object prefs paths. And these paths views give you the way a privilege was granted. Think about a role granted to another role granted to a user. And these views will tell you the path how a user has received certain privileges. So how does it work? If you have only one application in your database, it's easy. You can capture all privileges in the whole database. But if you've got some more applications in your database, running in your database, you have to identify your application somehow, either by a specific user or roles or a session context. And you can use these attributes when you define your policy. So when defining, you have four categories. One is G database, so it will capture all database activities. As mentioned, if you have your only one application in your database, it's fine. But if you've got some more applications, this will generate a lot of data which you do not need and will, in addition, need more space in the sysaux table space. Then we have grole. If you can, you have some special roles for your, which are used by your applications. And next is context. If there's a special session context for your application, and you can combine a role and context. Here's some syntax diagram. DBMS privilege capture, create capture, name, description, type, as mentioned, the constants, one of the constants before, role, one or more roles, and the condition is basically the context. Here's an example. The simplest one is all database activities. Just call it with a type DBMS privilege capture to database. Second is if you want to find out which public privileges are granted in your database and how they are used by your application. You can capture all public privileges, just use the role public. And here are some things with context. We can only use this context. For example, the user Scott, so you can find out the user monitor user Scott. And the last example is role and condition. So we have the role DBA and the user Scott, and this helps you to find out which DBA privileges were used by the user Scott. Here are some examples for this context. Session user, host, if you know there's a specific client, think about an application server, or if there's a specific operating system user who runs your application, you can use these context variables, so these functions. If you're using DBMS application info, which is really helpful but rarely used, you can even use module and action, or you can define your own context via DBMS session. Okay. Then next thing is to start your capture. You have to provide the policy name, and you should provide a run name so you can identify your specific runs. And that's it. After you've started this, all privileges will be captured. And yeah, now we come to the most important part. You run your application. Sounds easy, but you have to run all the operations, reports, jobs, screens, whatever, which are part of the application, which are used. I once did such an analysis at a customer, and we started the collection of privileges in December, and it ran until mid of January, until we got the information that the year-end operations were completed, and we had captured all the data or all the operations which were done during such a year-end operation. So this is important. Think about your business, think about special operations at the end of a month, at the end of a quarter. Capture these operations so that you will have the required privileges in place. If you don't have captured these privileges and you generate your a reduced set of privileges for your application, it will end with some errors if some privileges are missing. So this can end up with some errors if your tests are incomplete. Okay. As soon as the tests are complete, you can disable the capture. You don't have to provide the run name in this case because there can only be one run one of a policy running at the same time, so no two runs of the same policy at the same time. And then the database will stop capturing the privileges. At that point of time, all the findings, all the captured privileges are still only in memory. And you need the generate result procedure to fill these DBA used and unused views. And again, you have to provide the policy name and the run name. This is a simple example. Yeah, run name must be the same. It sounds obvious. And you can even omit the run name, but for documentation purposes, it's important because later on you will not have the information in the result tables. Then. And that's basically it for doing the privilege analysis. Huh? Some additional things. There's role capture admin, which is required. One privilege capture can be active at a time. It can be tricky, or if you bounce your instance, or if your cluster of a cluster of your server restarts during such analysis, you lose all your data. But when the database comes up again, the policy is still active. No? I'll show you later on. I'll show you a method how to reduce this risk. No? Don't do the housekeeping too early. Don't delete the run or drop the policy because it will remove or will delete all your result data. No? Important thing, the last line. I did lots of tests with privilege capture, and I did some analysis at customer side, and there was no real impact on performance. It's always a topic, what's the impact, and we couldn't measure any real impact. This may be different in high-end systems with a really high load, but in my experience, you can ignore the performance impact. Yeah, here's a procedure I mentioned before to reduce the risk of losing data in case of an instance failure, or and how to reduce the amount of space required in the SysOx table space. The idea is to run this capture on a daily basis. Have some scheduler job in the database running, and somewhere in the night you disable the capture, generate results, and then you create your own tables by create table as select from the DBA used and unused views. And then the data is out of your SysOx table space. You can delete the run and enable the capture again. So we'll have the data persistent, even if your instance fails, at least you have the last day, the data of the last day persistent. There's not that much data in the SysOx table space. And you can later on work with these tables, remove rows which you can ignore, etc. So it's your own data and you can work with it. Huh? Of course, there's a small time window between disable capture and enable capture in which no privileges are captured. But if you have an appropriate timing of this procedure of this database job, I think you can ignore that. Huh? Okay. Think about PL SQL objects. you know you have to grant directly to a user if some privileges are required. Granting to a role is not sufficient. This will be shown in the results. Here's an example with a direct grant and a role grant. And you can see it in the column used role that in one case, direct grant was used, and in the second case, the second row, the role grant was used. Keep that in mind if you're using PL SQL. Think about DB dependencies to find out dependencies between objects, and in which case a role grant is not enough. Okay, so now we have got the data. Let's check the results. And unfortunately, there are not any tools from Oracle for this analysis or for evaluating the results and for reducing the privilege set. There's these views, but nothing more. Here's an example from the DBA use descripts path. You can see privileges, select any table, analyze any and create session. And you can see two things in this slide. First thing is that the select any table privilege was granted in two ways to the user. Either a direct grant, this is the first line, and the second line shows you that the privilege was granted via the role secret, respectively the role top secret. So select any table was granted to top secret was granted to secret, and the role secret was granted to the user Scott. You have to read the path from right to left. Same with the connect role, which nowadays contains create session privilege only. It was granted to the user Scott. Oh, yeah. That's what I already told you. Okay. Second, object privileges. I use object privs. Find some sys objects, with application info and dual, which are, to my experience, always accessed when logging into a database. But in this case, we have additional privileges, select privilege on departments and select an update privilege on the employees table. And both were granted to user Scott directly. The used role is Scott, which is the username. Okay. DBA use privs is an overview which gives you all the privileges, object privileges and system privileges, basically the same information we had before, just in one query. DBA unused privs, so which privileges have been granted to the user Scott but were not used. There are a lot of grants to this object. I think there is, if you see the privileges on the data pump directory or in flashback, I think the exfil database role was granted to Scott or something similar. And yeah, these privileges have not been used during the tests. No? Keep in mind, it was always during the tests. And if your tests are not sufficient, there may be other situations in which the privileges may be required. Okay. Here's the DBA use privs. And it tells you even more about the operating system user, the host, the module, DBM's application info. Yeah. So it's a full view and provides you all the information. We can find the same information in our Enterprise Manager Cloud Control. Basically, the same selects as I did before, just with a nice GUI. Either the available policies, the report, I've seen that before, which privileges were used. Here we have some direct grants, and below there are roles, connect, resource, and secret. So next step is to generate commands for granting a reduced privilege set. As we are working with the user Scott in this case, in this demo, this presentation, we create a new role, Scott role, and first step is to grant system privileges. So we go to DBA use privs, filter all the system privileges, and simply create a grants command, grant script with this short 4 lines of SQL code. And the second thing is to grant object privileges. And this is a little bit more difficult, more complicated, because we change any privileges which have been used during the tests to select privileges. This is a case statement to filter all these any privileges which are not really secure, not really good, to make them specific grants to the table sequences, etc. And the results look like this. First line is the create session from the system privileges, and the second is the result from the object privileges, and that's basically what the user needs. And you can then revoke all the other privileges from the user and grant only this Scott restricted privs role. Yeah, that's basically it. I'll end with a short summary. I think privilege analysis is really helpful. Security becomes more and more important, and the tool helps you. You can think about including it in your tests, your daily tests, with your nightly builds to check which privileges are required. Most important thing is that you catch all your jobs, all your functions, modules, etc. in your tests. Otherwise, it can end up with some errors in production. Yeah, license restrictions is a thing we don't like, but we're not Oracle. No, we don't sell this stuff. So I think it was a good idea from Oracle to help the customers to make it more secure, make the applications more secure. Unfortunately, and okay, the name tells us it's an only analysis tool, but not a tool for the second step to make the application more secure by generating the appropriate SQL commands. So you have to do all the second part by yourself. I've shown you some simple queries to generate the statements. Okay, so here some more information, some blog posts, some links to the documentation, and yeah, that's it. A little bit faster than I've explained. But are there any questions? I cannot see the chat when I'm in full screen mode. So
You have to. No, at this moment, I don't see any questions raised or in the chat. There is no question. So, but if let's say attendees want to ask, they can unmute themselves and just ask questions. Meanwhile, I have a question regarding the how do I say it, that package for analysis, for privilege analysis. Does it impact? Has any impact on? Does it have any impact on performance when activated?
As mentioned, in my tests at the customer side haven't seen a real impact on performance.
Okay, and it will run whenever a select is or whenever object is addressed in a cursor.
Yeah. It will only be accessed once, so not for every row in a cursor, but
for a cursor. Probably.
It will be accessed once when you open the cursor. Then the information will be captured that the cursor selects this or that table, but not later on. And every privilege is only captured once. So.
Okay. That's it from my side. Okay, we have a question. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Radu, you don't. I don't hear you very. I hear you very low.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so very nice presentation, Markus. Okay, two questions maybe. How about labels? How the tool works with labels?
I must admit I haven't tested that. I did not have that use case in my at my customers.
Okay.
So you think about label security, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have any customers who are using a label security. So.
And the other question is, does the tool capture? Maybe I missed something. I'm not sure. Does the tool capture when, for example, you try to access something and it failed, or for example, so I have seen some applications done such a way that they try to access something, they cannot get the data, but they fail silently. For example, by handling the error. Does the tool capture anything like that?
No, it only captures successful operations. I think you should think about auditing if you want to find out these such excess attempts which are not successful. Audit some operation whenever not successful could be the term for that.
Yeah, that's it from me. Thank
you. Okay, so if there are any other questions, you can contact me via Twitter or via email anytime.
Okay, thank you. If you can stop sharing your screen.
I will. So thank you for attending, and I stop sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. What I will do now, as I told you in the beginning, I'm not sure if everyone was present when we started and I made the first presentation. So yeah, what we have, thank you for attending this evening event. Thank you both Radu and Markus. I think everyone agrees that the information is pretty useful. And yeah, what I wanted to add regarding you two is that you both were submitting this presentation to Contech 2021 conference. Unfortunately, there was so many presentation that we had to, let's say, reject is not the best way, but we only had the opportunity to accept 6, and there were another 2 speakers invited. So thank you for your contribution to Romanian Oracle user group community. And yeah, what I wanted to go now is
So
yeah.
Ciprian, this was like the small final from the World Cup, right?
Yeah, the smaller final, yeah.
The
Exactly, something like that.
participants.
Well, yeah, it's let's say it's a small how can I say it, a small way to in fact there are 2 advantages in this kind of contribution. So first of all, the speakers have the opportunity to present their presentation and to maybe improve it if they have questions, or if they discover during the presentation that some information can be added. So this is one opportunity. The second opportunity that arises is that our members can also get this information, the context information from your presentation. So it's true that a conference can, let's say, bring a lot of information in a very small time. But I think also this kind of events, like we are doing in the evening, are also important for our users. And even if there are not so many attendees, I think the ones who remained are really interested in what you have presented. And thank you again. So, but regarding the conference, I prepared a list of person who subscribe. Just 1 second. I need to prepare it. Okay. And I will run a random number. I must admit I was I attended the both, and I didn't let's say prepare before. So what I will do now, I will share my okay, I will reclaim host, and I will start to share my screen. Not my screen, but my browser. Share. Okay, let me see if you, let me know if you see my browser.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the site. I need to go to log out from the, sorry. This is the conference browser, the conference site. This is the agenda. We have 2 days, 25th and 26th of May. 4 presentations each day. 2 of Trivadi's colleagues of Markus, 2 people from Insum Solution, and 3 people from Oracle, depending on which Oracle, Oracle Romania or Oracle Corporation. The tickets, now we are in the normal period ticket, and it's about 50 lei, almost 10 euros. We considered that we need to have a ticket because, for example, today we have a no-show of 50%. So I think I prefer to have less people interested than a lot of people register and not showing up. So this is why we put a small fee for a ticket. But if you consider you are interested and you want to attend, you can submit an email to our contact email, and we can grant you with a ticket, or even more if you have colleagues interested. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to do, we have this list, 23 people which attended. I think Radu is here. I will leave him. Okay. And I will add also Markus. I do it just for to have the people who attended or subscribed to the event. And here I'm on Google with generating a number from 1 to 24, and I will press here the button. And this is the number 16. We'll go here and see that Virgil Bogdan Sârbu from Accenture received is the lucky winner. Virgil, I think you are still on the call. Let me see.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am on the.
Cool. So you are the lucky winner of a ticket to this conference, Contact by RoOUG 2021. I hope to see you online, and I hope to see everyone online. I will end with this screen. So there are many ways how you can attend this event. So one of them, let me mute everyone because I want to. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Let me see if can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So one way is to win this ticket in this raffle. Virgil just managed to do it. Second way is to buy a personal ticket on the site. If you encounter any problem, don't hesitate to contact me or to write to contact or to email to contact around roug.ro. The third way is to convince your employer to make a partnership with RoUG. We have a very, let's say, attractive packages, partner packages that will include half of the value of the package is a buyback of tickets that will return to the partners, so he can distribute it to their employees. So you can go to your partner, to your employee, and convince him to become one of the contact partners at the yeah, so these are the ways you can attend it. I hope I can see you there. And I think this is all from my side this evening. I hope you have enjoyed this TechSession event. And yeah, I see you in the contact conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Radu. Thank you, Markus. I will end this call and I will stop
Thanks.
the live.